Okay. I want to thank everyone for joining us for the meeting tonight. We're a little early compared to usual, but that scheduling, believe it or not, was not for the Packer game. It was because of a choir concert tonight that starts at 7:30. So in past years, it might have been for the Packers, but not this year. All right. And nacho year, I guess, is what they're saying to the Packers. But anyway, citizens request to speak. Do we have any? All right, very good. Let's get right into our reports then. And up, we have some special guests here. And I believe they're first graders. Is that right? Okay. We got that straight. And why don't you go ahead and introduce them, Dave?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we are excited, a new energy in the room tonight, having some kids with us. So our youngest Raiders definitely bringing the median age down a bit. So last month we talked about Act 20, legislation that informs reading instruction for grades K through 3 in Wisconsin. And we also gave an update on our reading program and some of the history of our reading program over the last 5 or so years. And one of the things we shared was that we're implementing a new phonics program in grades K2. And we thought it'd be interesting for you to get a sense of what that's all about in action. So we brought in some students, and Lisa Scoyen and Jenna Weiland are going to lead you through an experience where you get to see in action what's happening in the classroom. And big thanks to the kids. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Dave. Before we get started, I'd like Jenna to introduce our first grade guests.
So this is Cora and Thomas and Livy. They are first graders from EP Rock.
Hi.
As Dave said, this fall, all of our K2 teachers are implementing a new phonics resource from phonics to reading. The key features on the slide explain the framework and the delivery methods included within the program. If you want to move to that first slide. Oops, there you go. So these are the key features of the program. The main delivery method of from phonics to reading is universal explicit phonics instruction. Explicit phonics instruction is when a teacher directly tells all students the sound spelling relationships with consonants and vowels in a clearly defined scope and sequence. The routines included in the phonics program give students daily practice of applying the sound spelling relationships. Now Jenna is going to share and model some of the daily routines in our phonics program.
Perfect. All right, Tim, I'm going to have you move it forward one more slide. All right. So there are 5 key components in our resource, and I'm going to talk through those 5. There are many others, but these are the 5 that stay consistent all week. So every lesson is approximately 5 days, and each day we start with phonemic awareness. That is where we are working with students hearing sounds and manipulating them in words. So they're doing syllables, they are doing alliteration, blending, segmenting, and like I said, really that high advanced phonics of manipulating sounds. They also bring in these blending lines. Blending lines are happening multiple times a week, and they allow students opportunities to blend sounds into words, which then go into phrases and into sentences. Our next thing is the word letters. This is their favorite part of it, and they've all wanted to, they're going to model this for you at the end. Word letters are a great way to explicitly bring vocabulary and encoding or writing into a student's day. Each week has a decodable text or a decodable print that allows students to practice their print concepts like holding books, understanding how to read left to right, and tracking words. It also allows them to build their fluency and decoding skills and feel like readers. My kindergarten son will tell you that he is now a reader because he's bringing books home, and he came home one day and it was really exciting, said, "I'm reading words, Mom." And the next day he came home and he goes, I'm on to books now. So it's very much making these kids feel like readers. And finally, every week ends with an assessment. This allows parents to be informed by the teacher and teachers to be informed to guide their instruction as they move through the resource. So it's really great overall. Like Lisa said, it's explicit, it's systematic, and it's exactly what our students need. So on the next slide, we're going to go through a student model. You guys all have a packet in front of you. On page 20 is the word letters. Like I said, when I asked these lovely first graders, what is your favorite part about your phonics time? They all said word letters. It's a game for them. It's a fun way for them to, like I said, build vocabulary, but also practice not only their reading, their sounds, but also writing. So we're going to go through what this would look like in the classroom. Are you guys ready? Okay, so we start at the bottom of the word ladder, and I'm going to give you guys a hint. You're going to be changing one letter from the original word sat. What is our original word at the bottom?
Sat.
All right, so I want you to change one letter to make it be, what would the word be if you can wipe your feet on this? Livy.
Mat.
Matt, what letter are we going to change? The first letter, the middle letter, or the last letter?
First.
And what are we going to change it to?
An M.
All right, write the word mat for me, you guys. Go ahead. Okay. All right, so now we have mat, but I'm going to have you change another letter. I want you to change a letter to make it a word that means this helps you go in the right direction. What would we use to help us go in the right direction? What do you think? Thomas, what do you think? I see you thinking it through. What do we use to help us go in the right direction?
Map.
A map. What are we going to change on our word mat to make it into map?
The ending.
The ending sound. Let's switch that T to a P. Everyone write map. All right, so we have the word map. We're going to listen to music and do this with my foot. What would I do with my foot if I want to change one letter? Cora.
Tap.
Tap. What am I going to change in map to make it into tap?
The beginning.
All right, what am I going to turn it to?
A T.
All right, let's change map into tap. Great job, Kay. Let's change one more letter, and we're going to make it into the color that is pale brown. Livy?
Tan.
Tan. How do I change tap into tan?
You change the ending sound into an N.
All right, go for it. Change tap into tan. And the last one. Let's change one more letter. Let's change it so that it means the past tense of run. So remember, if I run to the store, I'm doing it now. What did I do if I did it yesterday? I what to the store? Cora?
Ran.
Ran. How do I change tan to ran?
The beginning.
Change the beginning sound, the T to a R. So as you can see, it's a great way to build vocabulary. They've got some great decoding skills, and with this, they're also writing, so they're building their encoding skills at the same time. So thank you guys for your help. You did a wonderful job. Are there any questions you guys have regarding our resource or the implementations we're having?
Well, it's not really a question, but this is the most fun I've had at a board meeting in a long time.
Would you guys
Can
want to
we-
come back again?
Yeah.
All right.
Can we start every board meeting with a word letter?
So one of the things, my youngest is 17 now, but one of the things I most remember about one of the days I volunteered in kindergarten was the range of abilities that kids have in kindergarten. Talk a little bit about how with this resource, I assume this kind of targets the middle, and then how do you both support the kids who are really struggling, but also keep the kids maybe for whom this is a little easy, keep them excited as well?
Yeah, so great question. One thing that we are knowing through the science of reading and through our research that decades and decades of research are showing is all kids need the same foundational skills. And so whether kids come in readers in kindergarten or first grade, there are still skills that they need to really establish strong to make them strong readers. So we know that even our high readers need these skills, and so they are part of the core instruction. With that, we also know that we have kids that will struggle or will succeed a little bit faster than others. So what we do is we have opportunities embedded in our day to have small groups, to pull groups, to reteach concepts or extend concepts. Also, the thing about this resource is it really allows students to take it to where they need to, with the idea of they're first starting with the reading and the decoding, then they're starting the writing piece, the encoding. So it really focuses on where is that child at. I think about specifically in kindergarten, there's spots where students are asked, what other words start with a specific sound? And we have certain kids right now that they're drawing pictures to represent that. We have other kids writing words. So it really allows teachers to take that and differentiate within the core, but then knowing that during those small group instructional times, teachers are also able to take this information and really either figure out do they need to reteach it or do they need to extend it to the next steps for students.
Mr. President, I was wondering if Cora and Livy and Thomas wanted to tell us something they like about first grade.
Can I go first, Cora? What do you love about first grade?
Recess.
Good answer.
Thomas, what do you love about first grade?
Playing with my friends.
Livy, what do you love about first grade?
I love it all.
You love it all.
Even Principal Mr. Schmidt?
Say yes, he's great.
Thank you very much for coming, and appreciate hearing it.
Thank you
Kids.
both. And I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. Jenna has done an amazing job leading this implementation, and our teachers have stepped up to the plate in a big way. So great things happening in our earliest grades.
Thank you. All right. Well, now I got some homework I can take when I see my granddaughter next weekend, so. All right, career and tech ed education update.
Yeah, so now we're going to go to the other end of the spectrum from our youngest learners to our older learners and talk a little bit about career and technical education, often using the abbreviation CTE. Leslie Blaskacek is going to lead us through a presentation to help you understand the full scope of what's happening, not in all of CTE, but we're going to focus on just a few aspects that we thought sometimes get a little glossed over, but are super important. A lot of great opportunities for kids, and Leslie is definitely the one to share it with us. Take it away.
Mhm. Right.
Education, and it has various components that they're listed here. First, it needs to be a pathway, and that means that you have to have courses that increase in difficulty, so a pathway of courses, level 1, level 2, so on. Next, they expect it to have dual enrollment or the ability for a student to be able to take college credit while in high school. Next, it has to have some component of work-based learning, either inside or outside of the institution. We have both. And then finally, it needs to have a CTSO, if at all possible, and that means Career Technical Student Organization. You know these by names like DECA or FFA, things like that. They also would like us to have, if at all possible, something called an IRC, or an Industry Recognized Credential. That's some kind of certification that someone on the outside of the institution would recognize as valuable. That would be like a CNA or something like that. And also, we like to have career exploration events. I added this, and I've been expanding it as we go so that students have an understanding of the breadth and the depth of opportunities within each career pathway. Because so often we think of 1 or 2 job titles, when in reality there are dozens of them. So I'd like to expose kids to those opportunities. So on the next slide, you'll see this is the pathways that we have for career and technical education. Again, this is a fraction of what we offer. But if you look at this grid, I know it's a bit small, but if you look at this, it shows the sequence of courses. So on the left, we start with the metals courses, and you'll see little asterisks on there. That means that those courses are dual enrolled, or that the kids can get college credit by taking those courses. And most of these courses are articulated with our Wisconsin Technical College System partners. And our home district is Northwood Technical College, so that's what most of them are. But there is a way that if Northwood doesn't offer something, we can then go out of district. And so some of these are articulated through Chippewa Valley Technical College. I'm happy to report also we're having preliminary conversations with UW Stout with the possibility of having some of our engineering classes count as dual enrolled. Those are in the very, very early stages. We've had some really good, productive conversations. So on the left, you'll see our metals courses. Next, you'll see transportation courses. I'm happy to report you'll see that small engines right now doesn't have an asterisk, But at a recent career exploration event, I cornered the person from CBTC and they said they are going to soon articulate small engines. Now, Northwood Tech doesn't offer that, so we'll work with CBTC on that, where we could get dual enrollment or college credit, and then CBTC would come to us and do the final test, skills test with the students. Then we have woods and construction, and there's a lot of ways that that can go, as you can see, woods and construction, and then drafting and CAD. And as we keep moving to the right, you'll see our Project Lead the Way courses. Project Lead the Way is a national curriculum, and ours in this case is in engineering. And so this articulates a little differently. Project Lead the Way is recognized by many, many colleges. So many times a student has to present at their college of choice and go through a credit for prior learning process, and then the credits are transcripted. And then all the way on the right, we have courses that are not in a pathway, but still if a student wants to explore these opportunities, they're welcome to take those classes. So they'll still have a sequence, so they're not considered a pathway, but nonetheless, we will offer them. They just aren't eligible for certain federal funding if they're not inside a pathway. So in the next slide, we'll see the dual enrollment opportunities that we offer. Now, a couple things to note. You'll see that in 22-23, we see a big jump in the number of students. I think that's due to two factors. Number one, I think it's because we moved to the block schedule. Students told us before this that it was difficult for them to fit CTE courses into their schedule. We were hopeful that with a block schedule we'd see an increase, and boy did we ever. The courses are just bursting at the seams. It's wonderful. And I think there's another reason too, and that's the change in the Laude system. In the past, if a student took a CTE course and they got an A, it may have had a negative impact on the grade point average. Now with the changed Laude system, they don't have to worry about that. So they're more open to take more courses without fear of having that negative impact. So I think that's why we're seeing that increase in CTE. Now you'll notice on the bottom right, I have it this year. We've never seen numbers like this in some of these courses. 76 kids in welding. I mean, that's wonderful, but it's presenting some interesting challenges. So we've been looking at funding for supplies and what do we do with 30 kids, and so we're getting a little creative. It's been a great problem to have. I don't even think it's a problem in all honesty, but it's a great situation that we're in, and so we're seeing really increased numbers, especially in our first year. So it'll be interesting to see as these kids progress through the system. So it makes my heart glad to see these kind of numbers in career and technical education. Another area where we have dual enrollment is Project Lead the Way, as I mentioned. Sometimes there's a little extra step with students that they need to go to their college of choice. But again, this is a federally recognized curriculum. This is the one that we're hoping to articulate with Stout. If all goes according as we hope, that we can have some of these PLTW courses count for their Engineering 101 course, which are classes that every engineer coming into Stout has to take. So that's what we're aiming for. I hope to have a good update for you sometime in the near future. Next comes work-based learning. And there's a couple things. There's, again, inside the institution and outside the institution. If it's inside the institution, it's called a student-based enterprise, or an SBE. So the one that we have is RadarWorks. And that's where kids who've taken the woods, the metals, the electronics classes combine, and they can take projects from outside. So a company may come to us from outside the district. One came to us recently and said, we have all these spools of wire. We need someone to weld us a frame to store that. So then they would approach the students. The students would price the opportunity. They would work with the outside vendor and so on. So it's a real world experience for them. They do every aspect of this. Everything from the quoting, the ordering the material, manufacturing, quality control, every part of it. So students never know what kind of project is going to show up on their doorstep. So it's a really good test of their skills. Then also in work-based learning, we have things that are outside the institution. Next slide if you can, Tim. Thanks. We have two forms of work-based learning. One is called on-the-job training that allows with the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction certification and employability skills. And there's also youth apprenticeship. That aligns with the Department of Workforce Development certification to be a youth apprentice. And here listed are the various pathways within tech ed that students can take. We've had students take almost all of these in given years. Again, it varies on what job the student has, but if they successfully complete youth apprenticeship, then they receive a certificate as a youth apprentice in that specific pathway. So next thing that we have that's exciting is, remember I talked about career technical student organizations. The most popular one in this part of CTE is called Skills USA. We haven't had a chapter for quite a while, but we have a new instructor in our autos program, and he wants to bring back Skills USA. So this will be an exciting opportunity. This is an opportunity for students to build skills and then compete on national and international levels on their skills. So we look forward to doing this. We'll let this new instructor get his legs under him for the first year, and then perhaps in the near future we will bring back the CTSO specific to these areas of tech ed. When it comes to industry recognized credentials, each pathway has one. And so we're always working to make sure that those are on student resumes and in student records. For construction, we have the OSHA 10 certification. For autos, we have the Automotive Service Excellence, or ASE certification. For metals, we're looking to expand because we haven't had one in the past, but we're looking at American Welding Society or maybe a NIMS certification. We have to see what it is that business and industry really would recognize. And we're looking for another one for woods. Some of these are eligible for Act 59 funding. And so through the CTE Technical Incentive Grant process, then we recapture those funds and are using it for CTE equipment. Finally, we have career exploration. So these are our kids from PLTW. They have a capstone project that they have to solve a problem, and then they bring in engineers from the outside. The students have to give a presentation and then receive evaluation and feedback on their project. So this was last year's culminating capstone day when they were ready to do their presentations. We also have for each pathway a career exploration. So we just had one last week called Build My Future. Some of you may have, you can switch it, Tim, when you get a chance, please. Thank you. Build My Future, some of you may have heard about this. This takes place at the St. Croix County Fairgrounds in Glenwood City, and kids get an opportunity to actually improve the fairgrounds, pouring concrete, putting on roofs, siding, gutters, whatever it may be. This is a really popular field trip, and it's held by the St. Croix Valley Home Builders Association. I think this year there were almost 2,000 kids that participated in this in our region. We also have manufacturing. It used to be Manufacturing Day, and now it's Manufacturing Month with an event taking place something new every week. Wednesday, we're going to have manufacturers come here on campus so that students can come and talk to them and find out about the various opportunities in manufacturing right in their backyard. Some of these manufacturers can't have students on their floor because of proprietary information or clean rooms or what have it. So that's an opportunity for them still to participate in something. And then we'll have tours of area manufacturers the last week in October. And in the middle of that, Northwood Technical College will have an event of their own that's open to the public to show what kind of programs they offer to support manufacturing. So October is Manufacturing Month, so that's why we chose October for those events. In the spring, we'll have Transportation Day. That'll be coming up in May. And that's in partnership with Luther and various other areas, Hudson Ford and so on. That big trailer that you see comes from the Minnesota, I can never remember the Minnesota Department of Transportation Excellence. And it's full of hands-on experiences, flight simulators, heavy equipment simulators, hands-on activities. They usually bring an electric car. We bring in pilots, those types of things to show the depth and breadth of transportation careers. So that will be coming in May. So, and then to look ahead, now what's going to be happening soon is we're going to be meeting with our tech ed instructors, and they're going to reflect on what they've done through the curriculum process. Very soon, these programs are going to have new standards, and there's new Wisconsin Career Readiness standards coming up. So they're going to look at their pathway and see there's been some desire to have some new courses, some desire to have some higher level courses. And so that'll be next on the docket that we'll be working with these instructors in order to expand those pathways and increase opportunities for students. So that's part of, again, our continuous improvement cycle that recycles and renews next year back into phase 1 of the curriculum improvement process. So I said a lot of stuff. I'm wondering if there's more questions about anything that I said or anything else related to CTE.
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks. Leslie, first off, this is absolutely fantastic, honestly. I mean, everything that's going on and how one is relating to the other to be able to take advantage of the block programming. And Nick, thanks for that effort, and everybody at the high school. Quick question. So you were talking about the Engineering 101 class and Stout potentially accepting it. Why is it limited only to Stout? Could it be potentially accepted by Madison or River Falls or what have you?
It could potentially. Unfortunately, the way the UW system works is often it's a course by course, institution by institution proposition. So Stout is our most likely first attempt. Now, there is also something called the transferology or the transfer information system in the UW system. So they may already have articulation agreements with Madison and with UW River Falls. So once we get our foot in the door, it may transfer to all those other locations. This is our first step in order to try and make that happen.
Perfect, thanks.
Molly.
Okay, thank you. I would like to echo Rob in saying this is fantastic. I love what you're doing. You can just see the steps and that it actually amounts to something. And just 2 comments with that. We recently had a sunroom put on our home, and 2 of the kids who, or I shouldn't say kids, they're adults, who work for this company that did it for us came from Hudson. Yeah. Yeah, and it was super cool because it's feeding back into the community and people who are living here and making their lives here, so it was fantastic. The other question is, I don't mean to kind of put you on the spot, but it's just something that kind of struck me is typically we don't see a lot of females going into many of these careers. I'm wondering if you could kind of talk about what's the breakdown and what we can do to support all kids to partake in CTE classes.
It's interesting that you raise that because we have to meet standards according to this federal legislation that I mentioned, this Perkins legislation. One of their indicators is what they call NTO, or non-traditional occupations. So they measure the number of girls that we have in these courses. And we've met the standard the last 3 years, so we're doing something right. I'm not sure. We have had instructors that are very passionate about this to make sure that the learning environments are female friendly. We also have had more girls sign up in general, and I just think that helps because once girls see other girls being successful, I think that helps. We've had more girls in Raider Works as well, and I think girls being able to tell the story has helped us be successful in encouraging more girls to do this. I'm happy to report at Build My Future, I think our percentage was a good quarter of girls attended the field trip, and I hope the field trip also helps. We've been trying to also bring professionals into the classroom who are NTO professionals, so males in healthcare or females in the trades. I would like to think that's having an impact. I don't know if I could take credit for it yet, but those are the types of things that we do, and Perkins is measuring that. So we are seeing a bump in that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for all that information. It's amazing. Thank you.
So you're talking a lot of this is community involvement, which I think is amazing. I know some people might be watching and thinking, gosh, I have experience to share, or maybe I want to get our company involved in this. How would they do that?
They can always contact me, certainly. I'm happy to connect them with whatever activities are going on. One thing that is kind of a challenge is we do have a lot of employers saying, can I present to your students? Well, honestly, if we did that for every employer who wanted to do that, we'd have very little time for instruction because a lot of them want to talk to our students. That's why we've moved to these pathway-specific career exploration opportunities. We're doing this with health. We're doing this. So my plan is to do this for every pathway so that people from business and industry can come and talk with our students. They can always post jobs with us, certainly. We can set up shadowing opportunities. So I would say the first step is to talk with me and see what opportunities we have. And if we don't have one, let's see how we can partner with something. I think people are often surprised at how many opportunities there are right here in their backyard, and what's going on in these big buildings that they don't know what happens inside of. And so we're trying to demystify that. And if someone has an idea, I am happy to work with them to see how we can get that information to students.
Very good. Bob.
Yeah, it's a wonderful report. Great news. Been hearing it in the community from parents and things about the opportunities increasing. So it's great to see some things that our district does allows for more participation. I hope to see more of that in the future. And please let us know if there's anything that we should do to allow. I'm worried about capacity and opportunity, so keep coming at us. So, and you shouldn't with a report like that. You really shouldn't have been threatened by the first graders.
Thanks, Leslie, and I appreciate you calling out the impact of the move to block schedule. One of the things I wonder about is, while it's great if a senior, instead of taking a study hall, now takes basic metals, at that point, they're a senior. Are the numbers increases across the board as opposed to primarily folks who have done everything else to get them ready to go to Madison and now they have room in their schedule for, I mean, yeah, I'm just thinking about how do we make sure that this is actually a path to an alternate path as opposed to, great, we've got seniors who can fit a trade class in before they head off where they were headed anyway. So talk a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, I would say most of the sections that we're offering right now, I was surprised when I looked at them, are intro classes, metals, basic metals, intro to woods. So I think we're seeing a lot of younger kids coming up. So that's why I look at that and think, oh boy, I hope we have room for them in metals too and woods too and things like that. I still think, I really believe that even if they're a senior, I would rather have a student come to me as a senior and say, you know, I was going one path and I realized after I took this metals class that that's really what I want to do. That to me is still a victory. I had a student who came to me last year and said they were all set to go to medical school, and then they went to get a certification, an industry recognized credential in EMT. And they said, and I did it, Leslie, and I absolutely hated it. I realized healthcare was not the path for me. And so he said, I'm going into finance now. And I thought, wow. I would much rather he did that as a senior than after 4 to 5 years of college. So to me, I don't know. I think the more we can expose them to different opportunities, the better off we are. Because even if they take the metals class and decide that isn't for them, it's more information than they started with. At worst, they'll end up with some good life skills. That'd be the worst outcome that they would have. I don't know that there's any way to make sure for every student that every course is exactly, you know, according to the pathway. But again, I look at a lot of these classes as just adulting skills, if nothing else, and familiarity with other fields. I think there's never a loss when you're doing that.
So I think what I heard you say is both and. That some
Yes.
of this growth is seniors who now can fit this in or will do it. And
Correct.
some of the growth is more freshmen and sophomores who are
Yes.
taking the first level courses.
Right,
Thank you.
yes. Yeah, when I looked, I did a little breakdown of what the courses are. I was really surprised. We have 7 sections of Intro to Woods this year. That's a lot. Basic metals is the same. So we really are seeing students early in their career choosing these courses. So that encourages me that there's interest early on. So that's why we're looking at, okay, maybe we have to include more capstone classes, more Woods 3 types of classes. So that's what we're going to look at as a group. But again, I never think there's a loss. I look back at my own high school career. I wish I had taken more of these courses. And I would rather students, again, just learn more about what's out there. Even if it's not a pathway they choose, they still have more information. I think that's a win.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Just, you mentioned the CTSO program, and you have a teacher who's excited about taking that on, which is absolutely fantastic. I think the challenge that we have sometimes is that we have this program that becomes very robust, a lot of excitement, but we only have that one teacher leading it. How do we protect a program that perhaps is successful into the future if that teacher who started chooses to leave us? What is that bench? How do you build that bench?
It is difficult because there are not a lot of people who are graduating with CTE degrees. So a lot of times when we post, we hold our breath and cross our fingers and hope we have a good pool. We've had some really excellent hires the last few rounds in various areas in CTE. I'm really happy to see that. So I think we're attracting good talent. So the first thing I would say is, first of all, if you have a really robust school district like we do, that word spreads and people want to be there. I think that makes a big difference. Number 2, I think you want to make sure that your curriculum is solid and that it's documented so that if, let's say Dave's my metals teacher and he wins the lottery, well, he leaves us something that we can work with so that we're not left with nothing and trying to scramble, and we know what was and we can build on that. So I think having a robust curriculum documentation process, which we do have, is also key. We also have a lot of teachers that cross teach. So for example, our metals instructor is teaching an Intro to Woods class. So we do some of that as well. And so many CTE folks are Renaissance folks, and so they can teach in multiple areas. And so they are scheduled in multiple areas. I think that helps as well, so that there's familiarity in each of the pathways. So I think between having an attractive proposition for prospective hires, having a good curriculum process where you've documented what you have and so it doesn't just drop, and also that cross-pollination, I think really helps us so that things don't fall apart if we have someone who decides to have another opportunity.
Any other comments or questions? Dave?
Just again, as you can hear, Leslie knows her stuff. And she used a word a couple times I think really highlights what sets her apart. Plan. She talked about the plan. She's great at supporting everything that's happening right now, but she has a vision for next steps. So we really appreciate everything Leslie brings to the table. She offers a lot.
Thank you. Thanks.
And again,
Thank
thank
you.
you for the report. I'm excited by this stuff, and I would just wish my son would have been able to have it in 2010 when he graduated, ended up going to Stout, and in the end, engineering technology degree, but being able to have this dual enrollment, getting maybe some credits along the way, would have been nice. So I'm glad we can offer that to our students now, and getting the word out to families so that they can take advantage of this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is the board member vacancy process. We announced at the last action meeting, actually not we, but Heather announced that she's going to be moving out of the district, therefore, which is effective November 30th. And so therefore we started a process, and I wanted to just highlight that where we are in that timeline. Nick?
Yeah, so the vacancy has been posted on our website. It is also going out in the district newsletter, which is, I think, this week. It's going to land mailboxes. Tomorrow it'll land in mailboxes. So every citizen in the mailing area of our school district should get that. We've the last day to submit a letter of application addressing qualifications and interest would be October 30th. We'll collect those, get them to the board prior to the board meeting on November 13th. Then at the board meeting, the board essentially has the opportunity to decide how they want to handle that. Either they can interview the candidates, or they can have the candidates just give a statement. It does in your policy require the board to give them an opportunity to make a statement, but if you want to do an interview process, we can work through that as well. And then the vacancy is not actually vacant. It doesn't become available until November 30th. So right now, it's just a tentative placeholder that if the board members want to, and if they end up picking an appointment on the November 13th meeting, that the actual special meeting where the appointment would actually happen would be on December 1st. And then that individual would also take the oath of office at that time. If for some reason the board says, yeah, that's not going to work, because people say, well, December 1st looks like it's a Friday. It would just be a special meeting that would be just for this. It can be a 7:30 in the morning type of meeting. It would just be more of a formality because the board would already be making their decisions at the November 13th meeting. If the board doesn't make the decisions by the November 13th meeting, then it gets kicked to the next, the December, I think the December 9th meeting or 5th meeting, somewhere in there. You guys can continue to deliberate. So any questions about that process? Just want to reiterate that that's where we're at.
Mr. President?
Yes. Rob.
So just for my clarity, would this be to serve out the rest of Heather's term, or is it just until this next election?
That's a great question. So the way this works is this individual would be appointed, and they would have to run again, or this position would become open in the spring of 25. So, So essentially what happens is there are 3 seats that are up in this coming election in spring of 24. Then in spring of 25, there would be 3 seats up again in spring of 25, with the lowest vote getter of those 3 would get the last year of this position. And so it would be a 1-year term in spring of 25. And if they want to stay on the board, they'd have to run again in spring of 26. So potentially an individual could have 2 board elections and an appointment in about 15 months. So.
Yeah. All right, any other questions on that? I guess, thanks for asking that question, Rob, because I wanted to make sure people knew what they were getting into if they were asking. It wasn't like we just appoint them and then they serve out until, the April 2026 time period.
Correct.
There would be at least one election there, and if they wanted to go beyond that, it'd be two with the second election in 26.
An appointment doesn't mean you have to run again. It's the same process that you all follow, that you have declaration of candidacies and all of those pieces, that if individual is appointed to the board, they accept the appointment. That doesn't mean they have to run again in 25. It just means that their seat would become vacant in 25. So.
Right, yeah, if that person got appointed, chose not to run in 25, and we didn't have three candidates, then we might be back
Back to another appointment.
back to another appointment. But
Yep.
anyway, no, we already have two applications in, so we definitely know that we're going to have a selection process.
Correct.
All right, very good. Then next up is the third Friday count report. Who's giving that report?
I'll just touch on it again. We went through this at the work session, but really wanted to make sure we talked about it at the regular meeting. And Bonnie, at any point, you can always step in if I'm misspeaking on this. Essentially, a third Friday count is our count that we use. We have a third Friday in September, and we have a second Friday in January, and it's the average of those two counts from the previous January and the current September is what helps us set our revenue limit essentially moving forward. One of the things that you can see is that we were down about 140 students from January to September. When we say down, the vast majority of that comes from the fact that we're graduating classes of 450. I think our graduating class was 450 in January, and our incoming kindergarten class was 307. So you can see how that's playing out. However, with the way summer school works out and everything else, we were able to mitigate that loss down to about a net of 67 students, 68 student loss through what we've done with summer school. So,
And what dollar figure are we multiplying that 68 by to come up with what we've lost in revenue?
roughly 12.3.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be that total loss. So we have kind of a rolling declining enrollment exemption that happens. But part of what has happened is, you remember, we started taking steep losses about 2 years ago. We started not having the in-migration. And when we dropped about 250 students, I think it was in fall of 20, so almost 3 years ago. So that's why our new revenue limit has kind of dropped down. That's why you saw in the budget projections, there's some substantial drops in revenue coming up as we move through, but we're managing through that. So just want to make sure people have that. If you can see roughly about the same. Open enrollment out was about 10 students higher, kind of scattered throughout some areas more, some areas less. Open enroll in was up about a student from where we were in January. We do track the bottom enrollments at the private schools and homeschool. The caveat with homeschool is I wouldn't put too much stock in that 107 number, being that homeschool, the deadline for homeschool paperwork is October 15th. Is that right, Tim? And so a better look at in about another month, we'll be able to give you the actual homeschool numbers last year compared to this year, because we do have some folks that tend to wait on the homeschool piece.
And the next time that we take any official numbers is that in
January,
January?
second Friday in January. Heather
Okay.
had a question.
Nick, I know in the past you've talked about, is it in-migration? Is that the phrase that we
Yep.
use for the fact that, yes, we expect our kindergarten class to come in lower than our senior class, but then we also look at the growth in that 12-year period. Is there any way to kind of quantify? And we've talked about we're just not seeing the in-migration that we've, now that we were seeing 10 years ago. Is there any way to get our arms around that in a quantifiable manner, aside from
Yeah,
it's not happening
absolutely.
as much?
And at a future meeting, I can bring the chart that I brought the spring that showed all the cohort data, so you could see exactly where they came in as kindergartners and by 12th graders. So basically, gave you about 12 years worth of data to look back, so you can kind of see that. And really, what we're seeing in the last 4 or 5 years, the immigration is just way down. We're not seeing that build on top of it. And actually, in the last couple of years, we've even seen some classes that have actually gone down, as you can see in the third Friday count. But I can bring that report back for this fall.
I think that would be helpful, and I even just think as we're having a broader community conversation about enrollment trends and what that means for facilities and classrooms, because I mean, I did the same thing, you know, where you do the scan up and look from grade to grade, and was surprised to see that there are quite a few that go down, but that's a snapshot, that's a year, that's not kind of trend. So I think the trend information, to be reminded about that would be important.
Absolutely.
Mr. President?
Yes, Rob.
So kudos to Molly for finding this homeschool number. Apparently it looks like there's 55 fewer homeschool kids compared to January of 23. Do you know where those kids went by chance?
Yep. So kind of reiterating what I was saying earlier, the homeschool number is not a firm number until October 15th, which is the end of the week. And so that's why I said in about a month, I'd give you a better number. So I wouldn't put much stock in the 107 to 162 right now. So once we get that new, because there's quite a few families that'll turn in their paperwork this week, like right up to the deadline. So if that homeschool number, I think the last time you guys saw this chart might have been, 130, so we'll just that's what it's at now, Tim. Okay. So the most current number is 134 and it'll keep climbing. So this is the chart from the actual snapshot on third Friday count of September.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions about the count? All right. We got that report. Now, next up is board member district activity recap.
Yeah, so as we talked about at your retreat, board members want an opportunity as if they were at any events over the last month or anything like that, anything they saw in the district or wanted to highlight or talk about, feel free to do that at this point.
All right. Rob.
Well, I guess a couple of things. First off, homecoming is always a ton of fun, especially when you win. And then we've got the choir concert tonight. For those of you in the community that haven't been to a choir concert perhaps in some time, our kids are just beyond talented. It's just phenomenal. And so that's going on tonight. And again, thanks to everybody, board administration, for starting half an hour early.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, Bob.
Yeah, I made the long trek of 50 yards to the football game the other night from my house, and I would agree with Rob. The energy with the student section, it was, I think, a pink out. Is that right? And parents were all dressed up as well, plus a lot of Halloween-ish things going on too. So even at the end of the game, when the outcome was pretty much decided, the student section was still very active. It was a good time.
Right. And I guess my district activity was kind of twofold. A project that's spanned 3 months, going back to early July. The Hudson Daybreak Rotary teamed with our athletic director, athletic/activities director, Aaron Moan, to help coordinate with students. It was a fundraising activity, and the Rotary's kind of got known for its car raffle, and this year the proceeds, once they pay the expenses and so forth, will be going to benefit high school activities and athletics. And so there were kids out there. Jim Ludiger is another board member, or another Rotary member. We're with like 5 students selling tickets at the volleyball game, and then I was able to attend the volleyball game and see Hudson get a win over Rice Lake. Was Rice Lake Warriors. And so it brought back memories of when my daughter in the early 2000s was in the volleyball team, and remembered why we loved going to those games. So anyway, that was fun. Kate?
We at the Hudson High School are looking forward to accepting, I think it's about 25 German students. They're coming right at the end of October, and they'll be here for about 2 weeks. So I know the German department is working so hard to make sure that these kids feel welcome right here in Hudson, Wisconsin. And so if you see any of them around or see any of the German teachers, make sure you welcome those kids here and pat the teachers on the back for doing such a good job.
Thank you, Kate. That's an important piece. Yes, Heather.
I am not in district, but I through work had an opportunity last week to go to a Stillwater Chamber event where the Stillwater superintendent basically did his dog and pony show regarding their upcoming referendum. And they did share the deck. So maybe Nick and Tracy, I'll forward that to you. It's helpful, I think, to see how other nearby districts are presenting their work. One big difference, they're projecting a growth of 1,000 students over the next 10 years. So they've got a different situation than we do. But did a nice job, I thought, in a pretty simple, high-level way, really talking about the strategic focus of the district this year, kind of what they're trying to do for students, families, and staff, talking about the estimated impact of the bond on the median Stillwater home of $500,000. Just, they did a nice job with the slides, I thought. So I will share those, and again, think that we can learn a lot by looking at neighboring districts.
All right, Molly.
I just have something kind of ancillary related to school is Hudson Safe, which puts on the senior all-night party, is planning. We have 2 new chairs, Alicia Schneider, and I cannot remember the other lady's name, so I apologize. But any parents, freshmen through senior, are welcome to get involved in that. It's, I think, been going for 30 years. Is that correct? 30 years? I know you were on it, Jamie. And it's to keep kids safe on graduation night. So it's been really successful. Thank you.
Yes. All right, great. Next up is, I guess, I asked to have a short report, but I wanted to recognize first on WASB, when we use the acronym WASB, it stands for Wisconsin Association of School Boards, and they have a member recognition program in which, it's really the backbone to getting board members educated and get development within their kind of the same similar professional development that teachers or administrators have, but board members get by going to WASB events. And so we have recognition of Molly Powers the other night, last week. Bob became a level 2. Congratulations, Bob. And Molly, this is your award, which is you're a level 1 now. And I don't know the exact number of hours or points that they assign, but basically you get more points for going to events like conventions, which the state convention spans 3.5 days, depending if you go to the pre-convention workshops, similar to the national convention, which some of us have been to before, and I guess 6 of us are signed up for the one coming up in February that will be in Dallas. So these are good opportunities to know best practices for being board members. So anyway, I appreciate your efforts in attending the state convention, the federal or the national convention, as well as the other, what do you call those, Heather, because you do them on the video, where webinars, thank you, yes. I know it was one of those fancy new words, so yeah. All right, then next up, we have the future search engagement and timeline. And last work session, we spent roughly 3 hours with Drew Howick. Is that his last name?
Yep.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so me working this week with Megan and Kate to kind of nail down the date that works best for them. Coming up in December for our first planning meeting. Once we get that nailed down, I've been working with Drew to get some ideas of dates for him. We'll get that meeting set, and then we'll get people invited to that meeting. And it won't be until we actually have that meeting, the people involved, the planning committee, then they'll set the next 2 dates.
I guess what's the planning committee for? Because we should probably tell the public what this future search engagement is.
So we're looking at doing a large-scale community engagement event coming up here in April, where we're really trying to get a wide swath of the community represented to really tell us what they want out of their schools, what they expect out of their schools. And, you know, they call it future search because it's kind of you're in search of what you want in the future as you move forward. There'll be a lot more information coming out from the school district as we get closer to the event. But the event right now is tentatively scheduled for the 4th, 5th, and 6th of April. It's a Thursday, Friday night, and then a Saturday morning. So people can start to mark their calendars on that, and we will continue to get more information out.
So the community is welcome to attend this on the 4th, 5th, and 6th. They don't have to be specifically invited.
Correct. Yep. It will be open to anyone that would like to come, but also we'll be sending out invitations as well.
But we're looking at 3 meeting nights and looking at, 90 minutes to 2 hours each night?
No, actually, it's a little bit longer than that. I think it's
Okay.
about 3 hours each night.
Okay, so it is a commitment, but it's ability to get some really substantial input into the district. So hopefully we get a lot of people, but it takes planning. Our goal is to get 250 people to this.
Yeah, I think if anything over 200 would be a huge win. 250, I think, would be probably the largest one that he's done. So if we could hit that, that would be outstanding.
All right, very good. And so that's more on that as we get the planning committee forged, and there's at least 3 planning meetings even before we get to April. So, and then finally the retreat recap, and anyone can chime in, but I thought it was a good effect, 2.5 hours basically after our kind of informal ice-breaking, because board members, believe it or not, it's not like we hang out on, social occasions frequently. And there are some people that actually think we have meetings before the meetings. They do that in other states. I found
Yes.
out they do that in Texas. But it's actually illegal in Wisconsin to do that. So board members don't get much chance to, just communicate generally, let alone about school ideas and so forth. So we had an opportunity to talk about the annual calendar and go through that. We'll be getting updated. But we essentially have 2 meetings a month. I think our exception this year was July, June and July, when we combined the work sessions with the action meetings. But within our time together last week, we talked about how some subjects will be discussed over multiple sessions when it comes to our annual report. There are many reports that are mandatory, like the seclusion and restraint report, but I wanted to, get ideas. Any board members want additional reporting than what we have? One of those was career and tech ed. And lo and behold, at the very next meeting, we have a report from career tech ed. And Leslie told me just before the meeting here, she could easily divide this up into 3 reports. And I think we would learn a lot. It's a great way of getting the word out to the community. And so we talked about those things, and then just overall community engagement, which I think this future search will be a springboard for not just, getting, general feedback. It'll also help us with our next strategic action plan, and it also could help us with ideas, moving forward. Generally, just the future of education in Hudson. So, and then we talked about also our engagement. We've had a bit of ebb and flow when it comes to engaging our representatives. I know Representative Zimmerman's been here on multiple occasions. We try to get him here at least once a year. And we had our congressman in our high school last year. So we want to continue to do those type of things. And, where we can, lobby the government. I think that there's an education day. We'll look to see if we can send some board members there. That's usually in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, any other thoughts or comments about the retreat and just generally how we want to improve how we conduct our meetings? Or, I try to open it up so that board members know what's going to be on each year we've got this annual, so you should know what's going to be discussed at the next action meeting, because it's usually whatever we discussed at the work session. But I'm also open to adding anything that's timely, that needs our attention. So, anybody have anything to add to that? Megan?
Mr. President, I just want to say I really appreciated the time at the retreat and that everybody took the extra time to have another meeting, especially being new, getting to hear more from you all about, what you know from being a board member for longer, and building that sort of team collegiality was really helpful for me. So thank you.
Very good. All right, next up we have our discussion and action agenda. And so we have consent items with expenditures, and I'd entertain a motion with the language that's on the screen.
Mr. President,
Molly?
I move to approval of the consent items and that the Chief Financial and Operations Officer be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $1,996,225.32.
Second?
All right, there's no discussion for this item. Is there, all those in favor of the motion signify by indicating aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And for those folks that are wondering, besides expenditures, we usually approve really exciting things like the minutes of the prior meetings and some human resource changes that happen virtually every month. This time of year, luckily, we don't have a lot of retirements, but we're going to have that time period coming up in the future. Then our last item before going into closed session will be the 23-24 budget update. And we're getting close to where we have to approve officially our mill rate, but we can't do that until we get certain report from the state. And that's not here yet. Is that right,
Correct.
Bonnie? So what do we have that's new and interesting with the budget?
So we have three things I just wanted to update you with. Obviously, our biggest thing that we're waiting for is our equalization aid. We'll get that on October 15th, so Saturday, so hopefully Friday. That will determine our mill rate, so that you'll get at the next meeting. What we did get this month was our finalized equalized property value for the district. So on the first column, I indicated what we had predicted, and the second column is where we ended up. Typically, that's due to if a township is shared, they kind of lobby out who gets the money and they make all those final determinations. So the final amount did go down about $5.8 million, but in the big scheme of things, that's pretty minor. From, I think we're at $6 billion of property value in the district. The next one was the school levy tax credit. This was kind of some good news. So we did find out that the legislation, they put money into the school levy tax credit. So that does not affect our mill rate at the district directly. But I don't know if you remember on your tax bill, it'll figure out everybody's mill rate. And then at the bottom, it says your taxes are reduced by X amount tied to the school levy tax credit. Our county did receive our district received $2.7 million additional funding, Baird is estimating. So that should be a 30% increase in what was on your tax bill last year. So it's hard to say what it was independently for people, but although it won't affect our mill rate directly, it is a reduction to your taxes. So that's a nice thing. And then I gave you some information. There's some links if you wanted to learn more about that in that memo. And then enrollment, it's really hard with those green sheets, but I just wanted to break it down, what exactly, when we do our revenue limit, what does our enrollment look like? So, and what Nick had talked about earlier, some are FTE. So last year we were at 80, this year we were at 196, and that was due mostly to, was it 3 days? 3 days of additional instruction that we were able to account for our students. Unfortunately, for state aid, we get to count all 196 of the students, but when you look at your revenue limit, you only get to count 40%. Why? I don't know. I mean, it costs us the same either way, but so for the revenue limit calculation, we get to count 78 of those. the summer FTE, when you break it down, when we have to actually put our number in, that was a difference from last year to this year. And as Nick had indicated earlier, the change was about 68 students. So on Friday, we'll get our equalization aid. We'll be able to do our final revenue limit calculation and get you a mill rate, and we can get that information out to you as soon as possible.
So this school levy tax credit, is that the same or different than what they used to call the lottery tax credit?
Same.
Same, all right. And then if you could scroll up, please, because I just wanted to emphasize something. There's a lot of misnomers, folks, between assessed value and equalized property value. So specifically for those of us that live in the town of Hudson and got something in the mail about 2 weeks ago indicated your assessed value was going up, in my case, 54%. It ends up being still a zero change on the equalized property value, correct?
No, that's
Nope.
that's not accurate.
Yeah,
Okay.
so basically, the state, the Department of Revenue has a calculation and they determine what equalized property value is district-wide or statewide. We divvy out our levy based on that number, so it's the same for every township. That township will take the assessed value and divvy it up. So if your entire township, generally speaking, if your entire township was reassessed and everybody went up, it should be pretty much the same unless the same percentage.
Right.
If you're a one-off and your township wasn't reassessed, but you were reassessed because either you bought a new property or something like that, there will be higher effects on your taxes.
Okay. So that thing of change, that's relative to each of our 5 municipalities we have in the district.
Correct, and the difference was the estimate that we gave you at the annual meeting versus what we finalized this month.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. Thanks for that
Yep.
explanation.
I have another question about that. So the equalized value is something related to the change in the property values in our district compared to the change in the property values in the state? Like there's some.
So the state, because every township assesses differently.
Yep.
The state, when we divvy out our levy, they use one formula, it's called equalized value.
Okay.
So that everybody in the state is consistent. So they say, and I'm just making this up, like town of Hudson, you're 20%, St. Joseph, you're 30%.
Mm-hmm.
So they take 30% of the levy. So then when it gets to the township, they take their number, which is based on assessed value,
Okay.
and divvy it out.
So they decide then how it gets paid
Correct.
based on the value of the homes or
Because
something. But
it's
they
specific to their township.
okay, but St. Joseph is told, okay, you got to figure out how to bill based on this.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
But the big thing to think about is just because that township
Yep.
there was reassessed higher, it doesn't affect what we give them as a levy
Yes.
percentage.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
They're given a dollar amount.
And they figure out
and
how
then
to.
they figure out how to
correct.
divide it amongst the homes.
Correct.
And the reason we use equalized value versus assessed is because our entity spans multiple municipalities. And some municipalities wait a long time to reassess. And so that's why you have these massive swings in reassessment. If you want to look at what your equalized value is on your tax form, it's your market, it'll say market value.
Mm-hmm.
That number is what the state sets according to
Okay.
real estate data, according to all kinds of stuff. They're saying they believe the value of your house is this. That's pretty consistent. It goes up pretty consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas assessed values in the town of Hudson, the average assessment just went up 50%, I think it was. Isn't that what they said
Right.
in the letter? Yep.
Thank
in
you.
1 year.
And then the school levy tax credit. So I tried to read these things. It's very confusing. So basically we set a mill rate and then the state gives a chunk of money that covers a portion of that. So if the mill rate is
So it doesn't so on your tax bill it would say like school district of Hudson, the county, each one. It doesn't reduce our mill rate specifically, But if you read the legislation, the fact is it's to reduce taxes that schools are putting.
Yep.
So on the bottom, it just is a net decrease of all of your taxes. So it doesn't say,
Okay.
oh, the schools, it just says it's a reduction in your tax.
So
your
it
bottom line.
decreases the amount that people have to pay.
Correct.
Actual.
The actual. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I
Is there-
think people just don't realize that it's linked to school property taxes,
Yeah.
which it would be nice for us to be able to say it reduced our mill rate, but.
Yeah.
For newer board members, I would highly recommend the pre-session where you can spend 3 to 4 hours at the state conference on school financing in the state of Wisconsin. And then after it, you'll still be confused by this, but at least you should understand it. Yeah.
All right. Other questions? I thought I saw somebody here indicate me. I guess if you could also summarize for us, Bonnie, because we have people watching this meeting and, they probably watched last month's meeting when we had the preliminary approval of the budget. Kind of just summarize what goes into that, because we had already, prior to that last meeting, the decisions had been made to cut the payroll by 808,000 and readjusting some things to get us to a point where we were zero-based. And we haven't introduced any proposal for substantial new spending, and if we did, that would have an impact on, we wouldn't be able to reduce the levy as much, or in fact, we'd have to raise it if we introduced new spending. But can you just
The
explain that?
timeline kind of our budget?
Yeah.
Sure. So prior to the start of of July 1, the school board needs to adopt a budget. We don't have our third Friday information, and we don't have a lot of information to set our final levy. So we make a prediction, we bring that to the board, they approve that. We keep updating that. We have our annual meeting. We have updated our settlements that happened this summer. We do our best to estimate where our property values will go. We present that at the annual meeting. And September, our big count day is our third Friday. That is our big determination of our revenue limit. So that's a number we're waiting for. Our equalization, our equalized value is a big number because that tells us what our levy will be. And then we'll also, on October 15th, get our equalized value, or our equalized aid estimate, our final number. So next meeting, you will actually make your final approval of the budget, which has all those factors. So unfortunately, we receive the majority of the things to set our budget 3 months after our budget starts, which is not a great way to operate, but that's the system we're in.
Right. But I think, thank you for that explanation. A lot of constituents might not understand it. We start talking about the budget for the next year, usually around March, in general terms. And if somebody's saying we want to hire in a particular area, whether it's another resource officer or anything like that, that's the time for that to be discussed and introduced, not the week before you're going to approve the levy.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, then I will entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to the language on the agenda. Oh, you got to say it.
Oh, that, okay. Sorry, I make a motion that the board will entertain a motion to convene the closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, parent 1, parent E, to discuss the UU property and district office, as well as pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent A, 19.85, parent 1, parent F, and 118.125 to consider disciplinary data of a specific person.
All right. We have a motion, a second by Rob. This requires a roll call vote. Bauman?
Aye.
Brown? Aye. Garza?
Aye.
Loglin? Powers?
Aye.
Rosowski?
Aye.
Johnson? Aye. The ayes have it. We'll stand in recess and go into closed session, from which we will adjourn and not come back into open session. We're in recess.